Now, Moz and I have been on a bit of a survival binge lately, most recently playing The Long Dark, which is a pretty hard survival act to follow. Craving some more hours in my life to be eaten away by an open world survival game, I gave Medieval Dynasty a go. First of all, the game is PC only, but a console port has been rumoured. Now I've got to stress, the game is in early access, and this is not a full review because the game is constantly being updated. More of an update on the early access really. Having originally released on September 17th, the game is now past the halfway mark on its roadmap of development. Developed by Toplitz Productions and RenderCube, the game now includes events, which are basically just random text pop-ups with a decision to make, challenges, fishing, riding and farming. During the first quarter of 2021, we can expect to see the first major update of the year, introducing pottery, beekeeping, alcohol production, and the second major update to include bandits. I think bandits will be huge for this game, and I'll get to that shortly, but I know I'll be hopping straight back into the game once the alcohol production is added, like... We play as Rasimir, who's in search for his Uncle Jordan after a war takes place in Europe during the Middle Ages. We discover Uncle Jordan is dead, and we've inherited some land to start a new life with. The game is very minimal on narrative, so don't expect a riveting plotline. It's a single player experience, so another thing not to expect is any co-op or PvP, which never bothers me, but still, it might bother some. It's quite a graphically strenuous game and can look pretty decent at 60 frames per second. I played on a 2080 Super with an i9, and with shadows being the biggest frame rate hog, lowering those left the game running nicely above 60 frames per second. It's such a gorgeous setting with some real stop and admire moments. Some textures seem a little softer than others, but overall a really stunning game, and the draw distance is very impressive. The lighting though is first class, whether it's the sun attempting to disperse the morning mist or sun rays piercing through the trees, illuminating each leaf, it really does look great. The whole look is very similar to Kingdom Come Deliverance, within the world itself and the UI. Check out our review for Kingdom Come Deliverance above, it was actually the first video we ever made on this channel too. Something I noticed early on was the devs have bug-proofed themselves from getting stuck in the game with options in the pause menu to completely reset yourself in the world, and there's also the option to ask NPCs if they can move a little bit. It's a considerate option to have. I'll get into the bugs and other issues shortly. The game seems to be considered survival, but I'd argue it's much more of a medieval life simulator with survival elements sprinkled in. The game is now customizable, so you can tweak the settings before starting a new game to fine-tune how it plays to your liking. The early criticism was how fast the days passed, and this among other options can now be tweaked. The three biggest draws to me in the game was the in-depth settlement building mechanic, the 4 seasons being cycled throughout the world, and of course getting myself a sexy wife to impregnate so my child can continue my dynasty as a playable character after I pass on like a fart in the wind. This proved harder than anticipated for numerous reasons. One, Rasimir seems to be a complete moron when it comes to conversing with women, because trying to flirt early in the game is like...
I have a bar. I own a bar. It's my bar, and I wanted to invite you to it. We have food and supplies, and it would be a good place. This storm is going to be bad, as you know, so why not be at the bar with me? And, you know, for the good of the race. So come to the bar.
Secondly, when I used the word sexy, this was used very loosely. I mean, it's a great addition, but I hope you're not picky because Jesus, woof. She needs some TLC, and make sure you don't piss her off and leave her chilling in the rain, because she'll take you for all you've got, and that includes your baby. She also has a tendency to irrationally freak the fuck out if you ignore her too, proving that they've really nailed the hormonal female stereotype here. Oh, it's just so sexist, it's disgusting, unbelievable. Thank God we live in a world where a couple can just message over Tinder if you're looking to smash and impregnate, because there's no way you'd catch me schlepping miles down the road to swim across a river before dodging a few wolf attacks for 12 days straight so I can use one line on a girl I fancy to be told I'm banned from speaking to her because she needs another day to process the sentence that just came out of my mouth. Me and Moz played together for a while, and we got rejected relentlessly by women all over the map at first, and after 2 weeks of this bird showing the smallest possible signs that she was actually interested and making a complete dick out of us for 2 straight in-game weeks, we thought we'd try it on, and guess what?
I mean, I don't like to come off as a difficult person.
Oh, now do you like to come off as a difficult person?
No.
No, of course not.
No. Who would?
No one likes to be a difficult person, so we can make it
I don't
work.
think my husband and I would be comfortable sharing a room.
Husband?
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you were married.
I didn't realize I had to tell you that.
She was fucking married! For fuck's sake! I knew the importance of getting married in the game. After all, it's called Medieval Dynasty, so I had to plan for my dynasty to continue on after I die. Eventually, I did get a woman to sleep with me. Out of pure desperation, I had to settle for the village munter, and I woke up the next morning like,
No, please, what have I done? Oh, God, what have I done? Oh, God. I love you. Oh, God!
Now, aside from what goes on under the bed sheets, this is not a very action-heavy game. In fact, the only action is through hunting, but with the previously mentioned imminent bandit update on the horizon, I think that will drastically improve on this game. I really enjoy what it has to offer so far, but there's definitely some substance missing. Yes, I understand the game's in early access, but I'm here to describe it for what it is currently. I don't think action is essential for any survival game, but my main point is that with such a low threat of death hanging over my head, it's hard to call this a survival game. The survival elements themselves are minimal, until winter kicks in, where body temperature starts to play a key role, keeping warm and topped up with fluids and food, but that was never a difficult task, though again, this could be tweaked at the start menu for players looking for a harder challenge. There's no fatigue, so it's pointless sleeping other than to pass the time and restore health. Not very survival-esque without fatigue, and the lack of pressure is eased even more when you wake up with your thirst and hunger bars being the same as when you went to sleep. We're given spears, bow and arrows and crossbows, as well as certain farming tools being used as weapons to hunt and fend off animal attacks. It's much more relaxed than most games calling themselves survival, and more simply just living the average life of a man in these times, with the attention to detail pointing more towards the growth of the character and the village you plan to turn into a town with your own two hands. Which leads me on to the settlement building. The ever-growing village system is a joy to build around you, but only as a result of grinding to the extreme and chopping trees down, which is the main resource to build, which could have been a lot smoother and more responsive. Too often I was swinging and missing with my axe when it was just clipping through the tree. The more you build, the more technology points you unlock, which after certain milestones unlock major building schematics, and with each one of these unlocks the option to purchase smaller schematics that go hand in hand with the larger ones. For example, unlocking the hen house will unlock the option to purchase the animal feed schematic. As you expand, the management tab becomes more of a necessity, and sadly, so does paying fucking taxes. You must keep the books in order and keep your residents' mood high enough for them to want to stick around, assign them to houses and do jobs that suit their skills. It's a really expansive system and one that will take a lot of playtime to see its maximum potential. Minus the slightly clunky controls when chopping down the trees, it's one of the best crafting menus I've seen in any survival game, and I imagine the future updates will expand on this even further. At first, the farming was something I thought might feel like a chore, or more of a stitched on mechanic to claim that there's farming in the game, but it ended up being a big positive for me. It's what felt most rewarding, and going into this level of detail is an element I've not seen in a survival game before. Having to plot your field, plough it through with a hoe, fertilise the soil with shit from the local shit seller, or harvest it from your animal's own turds. Plant the seeds during the correct season, and harvest during the correct season. This process is one I never want to experience in real life, and God bless the real farmers of this world, but it was a joy to experience with a mouse in my hand. It feels so rewarding to see a little baby sprout up from the ground after waiting out the seasons. As you'd expect, the process is just for yourself, but eventually you'll have a lot of mouths to feed, and planning ahead season by season is key to keeping everyone well fed throughout the harsher months. Now, onto the negatives of the game, and some of the issues that cropped up during my first playthrough. First thing I noticed was the lack of voice dialogue, a huge turn off for me considering characters just stupidly wave their arms at me silently. I understand that plot takes a back seat in a game like this, but there's a lot of off-putting communicating in the game. Now, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Well, even if there is somebody there to hear it in Medieval Dynasty, it still doesn't make a sound. Chopping down trees is probably the most common action in the game, and to still not have a simple audio effect for this action as we enter into the 4th month of early access is pretty rubbish. Another few audio issues were the soundtracks, where they would just stop dead mid-song, or my footstep audio that was a little bit off as well. Hearing no water effects when crossing the river and sometimes no footsteps at all. I'd be silently crossing the river and appearing on the other side like... NPCs, both human and animal, are all over the place. There's a lot of visible spawning, where a massive wissant bison thing would just drop from the sky a few yards from you. Animals would have a stationary pose but glide across the map with some pretty shocking motion blur, and there's some pretty bad pathing issues for the human NPCs too. I did suffer the occasional bug, as to be expected with any early access game. The master volume would set itself to 0 after a reboot, and the AI in particular was buggy and very immersion breaking. But even so, I have to stress the main issues of this are very fixable, thankfully. There was no quest breaking bugs or hard crashes, so overall a pretty well polished game already, prior to its full release, which bodes well for the future. Another issue, which isn't really a negative, but come on, the devs are clearly having a laugh here. I met a young child called Oldmere and a man who sells chickens called Egbert. Taking the piss. The side quests are very basic fetch quests with little to no backstory. I often found most side quests were achievable straight from my inventory the second I met the quest giver, so if you're busy gathering then it's likely you've already done the fetching for the fetch quest. Each quest gives you a reward and a boost to your overall Dynasty level, so it is worth doing. Overall, the key word for the game so far is substance. Again, I keep mentioning early access because I want to remind you, and myself, that the game is still growing, and I really believe the addition of bandits will add a whole new dimension to the game. How the combat works and feels is a subject for another day, but let's hope they nail it and add a real game-changing feature here. I'd also love the world to have a little bit more in it to explore, a few hidden chests in tucked away caves, abandoned shacks or locked doors with hidden keys to be found. That sort of thing would be great because it does feel a little barren at times. I didn't progress the game far enough to be able to afford a horse sadly, and that was with just under 30 hours under my belt, with it set to 12 days per season, but I'm sure we can all assume that will drastically improve venturing from A to B. So, to answer the video's question, is it worth your time in early access? I'd very cautiously say yes. If you can get this for £25 or $25 or less, and immersive life simulation is an attraction for you, then you've got at least 40 to 50 hours of fun waiting in this game in its current state. With the game still having some immersion breaking moments, the lack of threat and action on the whole, I think it really comes down to your preference because the game is a mix of genres and leans much closer to simulation rather than survival. For me, yes, it's worth your time, and if the Bandit update adds what I'm hoping for, then it could really take the game to a whole new level of quality and likely to please a much wider audience too. Thanks for watching peeps. If you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please give it a like and smash the shit out of that subscribe button. We've got plenty more reviews and other quirky gaming content coming your way this year. Peace out!